Welcome everyone to the Conversion Analysis Masterclass. Really pleased to have you joining us today. And with us today, we have Gareth Johns, who's TruReading's Chief Data Officer, and Gareth guides retail clients in planning strategies and taking data-driven actions. And his expertise ensures that businesses can leverage insights to enhance their customer experiences and drive growth. So today we are talking about conversion, and this topic is just so timely right now as we head into the holiday season. Absolutely everybody in retail who I'm talking with these days is talking about how they're scrambling to get ready for the next few months to make the most out of this important sales period. And so this is this is what's on people's minds. How do we make sure that we capitalize on the opportunity when someone comes in store? And so for just to set the stage, we know from IHL with some research that they've done that conversion and lack of conversion is almost $1 trillion problem in retail today. 984 billion in lost revenue due to things like poor inventory practices, out of stocks, also lack of staff when staff is needed in store. And so it's a huge problem, but right now there's no good way of doing conversion analysis, with things like survey responses being too low or unreliable, and in-store non-purchasers harder to pin down. So Gareth, quickly, let's define conversion in retail and what it means to run a conversion analysis in store.
Yeah, so you can define conversion, I think, pretty simply. It's most basic as the number of visiting consumers into your store and how you turn those into paying customers that leave your store with at least one item. I mean, at its highest level, I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about conversion. Um, yeah, conversion analysis generally. A lot of retailers have got means of collecting information on how many customers are coming into the store so they can come up with a conversion percentage, and then they are pushing on how do I increase that percentage and get more and more of the people that walk in the door to convert and buy at least one item before they leave. That's it at its most basic.
Yeah. And I think about e-commerce a lot too, and it's such a familiar metric online because you can see site visitation and you can see purchases, but in store, it's a bit harder to do. So, but I guess sort of framing the issue right now a bit more, why is conversion on the minds of retailers now more than ever? And what are we seeing in the data?
Well, I don't think conversion is, or trying to focus on conversion isn't necessarily something new for a number of retailers. Um, you know, customers, the fact that somebody walks in your door is not a dead cert that they are then going to purchase a product before they leave. So conversion's always been a big deal. I think it's becoming more of a big deal because stores are obviously being used for kind of showrooming. So customers are coming in, they have the information at their fingertips to find out whether that item can be purchased elsewhere for cheaper, whether they can get a deal, whether they can get it shipped to their house, in a matter of hours or days. So that whole kind of concept of immediate gratification kind of goes. And there's a danger you use the store for the expertise and everything else, but you don't quite convert the person at the end, and you lose out on the sale. So I think that's why it is so important. There's only so much you can do about getting customers to trade up or getting the customers that are purchasing to purchase another thing, when for most of the retailers that we work with, actually the conversion is the biggest opportunity, and that's where they can see the biggest change if they can get that right.
Right. When you have someone there physically in your store, that's your huge opportunity. But there's just so much extra competition these days with, not just the store that's two down in the mall, but with omni-channel competition and digital. So when you think of traditional ways of doing some kind of conversion analysis and understanding, how do we make sure that when someone is in store that we make the most of that opportunity and ensure that we have something they want to purchase and help them purchase something? Those traditional ways of doing the analysis, what are your thoughts on that? So focus groups, QR codes that are on the wall as someone exits the store, tablets. I don't know what other means and methods you might have in mind.
I mean, I think there's sort of two parts to conversion measurement or trying to understand conversion. There's a first part which is all around measurement. Um, and that's about effectively having some means of tracking the number of customers that come in your door. So whether that's footfall counters, whether that's cameras at the door, cameras checking the people walking past outside, whatever it is, there are lots of technology that allows you to get a better sense of customer numbers. And I think that's obviously there's more and more ways of doing that. You can even connect, phone companies I'm sure will sell that information on people walking past, so you can get a better sense of what the total numbers are. Um, and measurement in itself can be good if everyone knows what their conversion percentage is. There is a part of you get what you measure. So if you measure it, then people are aware of it, and then potentially you can grow it. But really, you have to, I think, then say, well, what am I going to do differently? Because if I don't do anything differently, then probably whatever my conversion number is today is going to be what's my conversion number tomorrow and from then on. So then that gets into, well, how do you understand why people who don't convert choose to leave you? What could you have done differently? And I think that's where there's this almost idealistic view of I can just talk to the people that didn't purchase from me and find out from them, what was it that stopped you from purchasing from me today? And I just think that's a fairly unrealistic expectation. It's very hard to get those customers. If you do manage to get them through some sort of technology, it's often quite intrusive to them. They're not the type customers aren't going to want to talk to you if they've come into your store and not found anything that they wanted and they've now got to go out and go somewhere else. They're probably not going to give you very good information. If you do get any information, it's going to be from a very small sample of customers that's probably not going to be representative. And it's unlikely that you'll find something there that can really turn into this is what I'm going to do differently in my store. So I think traditionally that's where people have struggled.
Mm.
Is even if I know my conversion percentage, I don't really know what to do to make that conversion percentage greater. And I think also the thing about conversion is, I mean, there's effectively two or three levers you can pull on that, right? There's what's the role of staff in increasing conversion? What's the role of my product in increasing conversion? And what's the role of kind of, I guess, my visual merchandising and getting people to get excited about coming into the store and actually trying to convert? And I think generally when we talk about conversion analysis, the easiest one to make a change quickly on is that kind of staff role. What is the role of staff in increasing conversion? But we are seeing lots of stores that are really trying to streamline their processes, streamline their resources. They just haven't got either the staff to engage customers enough, or they're trying to be as automated as possible. And actually that's kind of having a hit on conversion because they're asking the product and the visual merchandising to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And maybe they haven't really figured out what they need to do there to make that happen. So I'd say generally when we think about conversion, we're thinking about what are the things that you would expect staff to do that will give you the biggest opportunity to increase that conversion number quickly.
Yeah, when I think of some of those other methods, it's like this holy grail to think, oh, if I could just ask non-purchasers. But like you said, it's so intrusive to ask people to do that. And so you might get a few people with some of these other methods to respond. But then you have that issue of, is this even really representative? If you've got, four people who fed back to you on the thousands that walked out, is that really representative? Because it's so hard to get people to do that. And then also, I just know personally, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to sort of see the ins and outs of a geolocated survey. So some people think that that would be interesting. Oh, if we could just ping people on their phone when they walk out of our store, but that technology is notoriously unreliable. So what was happening was it was a certain kind of retailer, but there was this pool of people that were recruited that had an app on their phone, and they're getting pinged to take a survey when they left the store. But they weren't leaving the store. They were in the restaurant next door. They were actually blocks away. And it's just a huge flaw in the data to try and get feedback from those kind of non-purchasers. So when I think about my own experiences there, I know that some retailers might think it's impossible to learn about non-buyers from people who did buy or make a purchase in store. What do you think of that?
I think from the data that we capture, obviously our approach and our process means that it is very easy for us to get feedback from people who purchase because we ask them at the point of purchase at the till. But what we see with that data is actually it's also very good at being able to identify the differences between a store that's doing really well for conversion and one that it really isn't. And then how do you take the stores that have got the opportunity to improve on conversion and point them in the direction of these are the things that you're either not doing well, or these are the times you're not doing them well, or these are the situations where you're not doing them well. And that's really what we're focusing on. It's kind of those basics of these are the 5 things that you need to do to give yourself the maximum chance of getting conversion. This is how you're doing versus other stores like you, and this is where you need to make that improvement. And it's really, the things you need to do aren't rocket science, as in most people in retail would point at them and go, yes, that's kind of the things I need to do. It's knowing where you're not doing them, or knowing the situations where you're not doing them, and being able to target interventions to make that better. That's really the key, I think.
Right. The precision of where and when, exactly which stores and what times of day, which shifts are the times and place where you have the opportunity to make a
Yeah.
difference. Yeah. Is there anything else about the true rating approach to conversion analysis that would be worthwhile sharing?
Yeah, I think when we do it, that one of the first things that we have to think about is the fact that not all stores are equal. So where a particular store is located has a huge impact on passing trade, and really how much of an intent the people walking in the store really did have to convert. So that's a really big thing to think about. I don't think any retailer can really take their whole store estate and say every store is equal. One's in a high traffic shopping mall or high street are going to see a lot more passing trade, and customers are going to have a much kind of lower intent to purchase when they first walk through the door than stores that are maybe a bit further away in a strip mall or a out of town shopping center where people have made the effort to go there probably because they are looking to purchase, and that intent is much higher. So treating all stores equally, I think, is kind of the first thing I would guard against. But there is a way to kind of break stores into groups and say, okay, these stores should be treated the same because they're all kind of, they're all in high density shopping centers, or they've all got the same sort of traffic, or they're all in airports, or whatever it might be. So you can get a sense of who should you be comparing stores to, rather than just kind of treating your whole estate as some big amorphous blob. I'd say that's the first thing we look at. Then the second really important thing is trying to understand the ratio between the footfall through the door and the staff hours. And that's often a key indicator of whether or not the staff are going to be able to do the things that are most likely to increase conversion. And I think why that's an issue is because a lot of stores seem to almost set their resource based on revenue, not based on footfall. So this is a store that does 100,000 a week, so this is how many people it gets. This is another store, it does 100,000 a week, so it gets the same number of people. But actually the staff are having to cope with wildly different numbers of footfall. And so that ratio of, how many staff hours to customer numbers is a really important factor in understanding the experience that staff are able to give. But it's also a really good one for being able to bring stores together and say, these 2 stores are the same. Every staff hour has 14 customers. So they should be able to deliver a similar level of service. How big a gap have they got, and how do I start to shrink that gap? And that's really powerful when you're talking to store managers, because they can see others, peers that they recognize as being very similar to them, and they can see them doing a better job, and therefore they know where their kind of headroom is to improve. And so that kind of breaking below the average is a really important thing.
The first part of your answer makes me think too, because I know I saw an analysis you did with one of our clients, a quarterly review, and your team broke out outlet malls versus traditional stores. And I had a conversation with a retailer last week, And it's just like the service model is so different in those environments. So when you talk about comparing similar stores, you just staff differently. Like people, like you say, come in with a different intent or
Yep.
even have different perceptions of the brand. I'm here for a premium garment. I know I can get the kind of thing I want here versus the outlet malls. Like I'm here for a deal. And so, yeah, you staff differently and you take a different approach to the kind of service that you want to provide and the training that you're going to provide as well. So that makes a lot of sense to me when you're talking
Yeah.
about those different comparisons. I don't know if you have any other highlights from some other conversion analysis projects that you may have run recently.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say just to your point about like everybody's got a different service approach. I think actually what we're seeing as we go around is everyone's got a version of something fairly similar, right? So almost all stores where there is a high level of service involved in the sale, or an expectation at least that staff will engage customers in that sale, I would say there's kind of 4 or 5 main steps that they're talking about. So there's always a kind of a greet, some type of asking the customer what they're in the market for, why, what have they come for, what are they looking to do, what are they trying to find, that kind of understand the customer mission, if you like. And then there's a recommendation stage where the staff member is supposed to recommend 1 or 2 items based on their understanding of the customer need. There's generally a complement the purchase or complete the purchase or complete the look or something, which is the how do I go from not just that initial item, but trying to kind of round it out to either other products or other services that go along with that item. And then finally, there's the kind of the close the deal piece of getting the customer and the item to the till. So I'd say generally we're asking questions around those 5 areas of the kind of service journey, if you like, or customer journey. And we're tying that to the conversion percentages, and we're tying it to what's the staff to customer ratio in the store at the time that that customer had that experience. And that's what enabled us to say these stores should be considered equal because they have similar ratios. Um, this is the particular aspect of that journey where this store is falling down. And when if this store were to do this aspect of it 10% better, this is what we think it could lead to in conversion. And then it becomes a discussion for that store about, well, how do I then move forward to do that? And depending on which stage is the problem, that leads to different actions, I think. So if you're falling down on the, I'm not even getting to the point where I can greet customers, or I don't have staff available because the ratios are so out that I can't spend any time with them and I can't even ask them what they're here to shop for, that generally leads to either your kind of staffing model is wrong in this store, or you're tasking customer staff with too many kind of back office tasks when they should be focused front office at greeting customers. But then if you get into the later stages of that journey and it's more about I'm not making the recommendations, or the recommendations aren't being well received, that kind of if staff don't feel comfortable doing that, that can often be either a training issue or it can actually be a hiring issue. If you're not hiring staff members that understand your product and are passionate about whatever you're selling, that's seen by customers and that comes through. So I think we start off with our conversion analysis being, we ask a bunch of questions, we get some data, we show you the differences, but it actually leads through to some pretty fundamental changes, which are, have I got my staffing model right? Have I got the training right? Have I got my hiring policies right? And where can I make an investment, and will that investment pay off? That's kind of, I guess, theoretically how it all works. In terms of specific examples you were talking about, we've done 2 that I'd probably call out. One was for a footwear retailer in the US, where we were looking at different stores, as you were talking about, and saying these stores have a lower staff to customer ratio. That's the right way around. More customers coming in for each staff hour, therefore less able to greet customers, less able to ask them what they're looking for to purchase. And we looked at what happens if you change the labor model and you put more staff in, and does it actually move conversion up? And what we actually found was, yeah, if you just throw money at the problem, you'll get that money back. It pays for itself. It has a positive ROI. Whether it's the best place that you could use that money is kind of a conversation for that retailer but they could maybe find other places to use that money. So what we actually found, which was more interesting, was the range in performance for stores that had similar ratios was so big that actually their biggest opportunity wasn't just to throw money at poor performing stores to make them slightly better. It was to really focus on the training of why are you only able to greet 80% of customers when another store with very similar ratios is able to greet 95. And it's that getting into the data and being able to talk to the stores that are having the problems and show them what they could be achieving. That's really the key piece of that.
Mm-hmm. There's an element of this that maybe isn't obvious, but just that makes it possible. The fact that the feedback comes from the point of sale, and so it's integrated with the information about what people purchased and the dollar amount, so you can really see those dynamics in when people are greeted, they spend more. I mean, that's how we know that, because it's all, it might seem like a simple question, were you greeted, but there's so much behind it that then you can use to show those lower performing stores that they truly have some pretty high potential sales gains that they could make.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's one other thing that comes to mind to me, which is, a lot of this, we're talking about, service elements and like, greeting customers or helping them and bringing them, but the idea of a conversion and increasing basket size or sales in other types of retail, like grocery, still applies, because there are elements about the store experience that you can analyze and understand what drives a higher basket size, and wondering about some of the things you can do there in some of these other types of retail.
Yeah. So I think if you take grocery as an example, that's some people do go into a grocery store and walk out without buying a single item, right? But most people probably do buy something. So in grocery, it's not a straightforward, how do I get my foot, or even do I even need to measure my footfall versus my sales numbers? But it's more about, how do I get my customers to shop more of the store, to go down all the aisles and sort of shop the whole store, and what's the impact when they don't do that? And so what we've done with grocery is more about, and this is one where actually staff probably do have less of a role to play, right? You generally, shopping in a grocery store is more of a self-serve environment. So you are reliant on the product and you're reliant on the merchandising kind of visualization of it to get customers to purchase from those aisles. So we've asked questions there specifically around what people thought about the quality, what they thought about the value, whether the specific items that they needed were in stock, and whether or not that brand is their top choice for that category. So, I think in grocery, we're seeing more and more that customers are willing to split their shop across multiple retailers. And if you haven't got the items that customer needs in certain departments where there is low chance of substitutability, then customers will start to leave. They won't buy that item there. But it's not just that item that's the problem then, right? If you're having to go somewhere else to do some of your shop, then it's a much easier case to say, well, I'll do a bit more of my shop there. And then next week I'll do a bit more of my shop there. And before you know it, you've gone from being the retailer that had the weekly shop to the retailer that's just maybe got the occasional top-up shop. So yeah, I think in grocery, conversion is less of a binary thing. It's much more of a nuanced point. You don't lose customers completely, so you don't have a lapsed customer concept, but customers that were very loyal to you and were premium and were doing all their weekly shop with you, they may very well start to do less and less of that shop over time. So yeah, in grocery, it's about finding what's the thing that matters most. Is it that you're just not seen in the consideration set, so you're not even in their sort of choice for that product because of some issue, or is it that you have points of the day where the quality is not as good and that causes the problem? Or is it that actually you've kind of tried to rationalize the range, but you've lost the one item that customer needed, and therefore they're going to go somewhere else? So all of those things start to come into play with conversion for grocery, which I suppose is quite different from what we were talking about before, conversion, where there's a high service element and a staff engagement piece. But all of it comes back to, if we ask the right questions of customers in store and those that are purchasing, and we look at what they're purchasing and when they're purchasing, we can really get a better sense of which part of the model is falling down, or the service approach or customer journey is falling down, and in what situations. Is it this works well in the morning but not in the afternoon, or staff greet customers until 50 people are in the store at the same time and then it all falls to pieces, or staff are great at making recommendations in footwear but they're really bad in apparel. What's the kind of specific action that you need to take? And I think with all of this, most people that we're working with, they've worked in retail, they know what they need to do. If you present them with this is where the problem is. We're not trying to teach them something they don't know. It's more about telling them where their current performance is in more detail so they can really pinpoint the expertise they've already got about, right, I know what I need to do now. I'm going to intervene here in this way and I'm going to do this thing. And then I can measure the outcome and say, yes, that's worked. I can roll it out elsewhere. So I think it's that feedback loop, as you're saying, it's so important to this.
Well, I think that's probably the perfect place to end because here we are at time already. We could talk about this for hours. Thanks so much, Gareth, for your thoughts on this topic. And thanks to everyone for watching. And I guess all I'll say is keep an eye out for some follow-ups, including a conversion guide that we'll provide that gives a little more insight on these topics. So thanks again, Gareth. Great to talk to you today.
Good to talk to you, Sean.